My name is Matt Schulte. I'm from Manchester, which is a suburb of Cedar Rapids. For those of you that don't know where that is, it's a town of 5,000 people, same place as Mitch, Peyton. So I've been working for Northwestern Mutual for 14 years, doing insurance and investments for people. So I help them chart their course with their overall financial future. So it's probably about a year ago I started figuring out how many meetings I've actually had, and it's over 8,000 financial planning meetings with people. So obviously through that time you learn a lot about trends of how people manage their finances. You also learn about what works really well, where people make mistakes, where people really get ahead. So I'm going to touch on 10,000 square foot aerial view of Finances 101. Does that make sense? So I'm going to save some time for the end for some questions, but I want this to be interactive. I'm going to draw pictures. I'll tell you right now, I'm not an artist, so it's not going to be to scale or anything like that. So the first thing that I wrote down in my notes was, and that I've noticed over time with people, is there's two things that money is going to do, or what you're going to do with your money. You're either going to manage it, or it will manage you. And what I mean by that is if you manage it, you start to become in control of what you're doing with your life financially. Okay, money is not everything, like Mitch had talked before. Money is not everything. However, when you go to buy groceries and you give them a really big smile, they don't let you transfer all the way through with all the groceries, right? They require that you have some money to pay for it. Okay? So you're either going to manage it or it will manage you. What does that look like? That is, you are watching every tiny penny because you don't know if the amount of money you were paid is going to be enough to pay for all of your bills. And you're constantly thinking about money. It's not a fun way to live your financial life, constantly having that hanging over your head. So my goal today is to help all of you figure out ways that you can manage your money and be in control and hopefully build some massive wealth. So now, before I jump into that, I want to walk you through the common excuses that I hear from people on why they don't save money. I was on a conference call about a year ago, and we get to hear some really awesome people in the career that I do, and it was actually a sports psychologist for the St. Louis Cardinals as they're winning the World Series. And I'm on this conference call listening to this guy. And he talked about how excuses will mask our opportunities to learn. Our excuses mask our opportunity to learn. Okay, so now let me give you some of the financial planning mistakes people make, the excuses people will give on why I'm not able to save yet. All right? When you're the ages between 22 and age 28, here might be some of the excuses you may come up with on why you're not going to save. Maybe some of you can give me these right now. I know one of them is, hey, I just got out of college. I am finally making money. I don't even want to think about that yet. Okay, there's one excuse. The second excuse is what happens 6 months after you graduate? What kicks in? Loans, right? A lot of you look at me like, loans, yes. Okay, so your student loans are going to kick in 6 months after you graduate. That can sometimes be a barrier, or an excuse will sometimes hold out there that, I cannot set money aside for my future because I have these student loans coming in. All right? Another one is, I'm still young. I don't need to be saving yet. I'm still young. You know, if 25 to 30 years old, there might be weddings in there. You know, you might be starting a family. Those are going to be excuses. I wrote from age 28 to 40. You're probably going to be getting married, maybe having kids. Well, I can't save then, right? I got daycare costs. I just bought a house. Can't save now. All right? I've got daycare. Now we might have to upgrade the house because we've had 3 or 4 kids. All of a sudden you get to age 40 or 50, and now those kids are approaching college. Well, I can't save now because I got college. So my point is, don't let all of the stages of life get in the way of you saving for your future. Because all of a sudden you hit 50 years old, and we've seen it a ton in my business. They hit 50 years old and like, oh wow, how am I supposed to save enough for the next 10 years to live off of for the next 30? Okay? So just don't fall victim to all of those excuses. So I'm going to draw a house, and hopefully this somewhat looks like a house. Okay? So here we go. We got the roof. It's a pretty good house, right? Oh, except the roof is a little bit off. All right, there we go. Okay. So has any of you? Yeah, that's good. I know. Really good. We get a little overhang here. Yeah. Okay. So have any of you ever pulled up to a really nice house before? So you pull up on the street, you pull off to the side, and you just stop. And has any of you ever thought that this house that's got this nice stone on the front, the pitch of the roof, the landscaping, all of that is just top notch, and you're just fired up looking at it? And have you ever thought to yourself, that is an awesome foundation on that house? That's the coolest foundation I've ever seen. You don't say that, do you? You look at everything else. Okay? When it comes to finances, a lot of times people always want to talk about the fancy part of the house. They want to talk about, hey, what stocks are you buying? Where are you saving this money, saving that money? What I want you all to remember is there is a foundation typically in the state of Iowa. If you're from southern United States, you don't need basements to hide from tornadoes like we do. But for the most part, we all have a foundation. Now, that's the foundation. What is wrong? I know I'm a horrible drawer, but what is wrong with that part of the foundation? It doesn't cover the whole house. Okay? Financial Planning 101. What typically allows you to pay your bills or to save money? Money, which comes from work, which is your income, right? Income powers your overall financial situation. Okay? Now, the first basic step of Financial Planning 101 is you want to have a solid foundation, but here's one area where a lot of people will miss it. If you're at work, you will have disability coverage. That's a fancy word for income protection. Wherever you go to work, the very first benefit you need to talk about is disability income. Because if your income stops, does it matter what you're putting in your 401k? How are you going to pay your mortgage or anything if your income stops? It's not going to happen, is it? Now, the reason I wrote this on here is typically you have 60% of your income covered through work. A lot of times people are like, oh, I have that through work. Yeah, for the most part you probably do, but you don't have a full foundation because they typically won't cover it all. Long story short, they make that 60% taxable, so it all of a sudden turns into 45% of your income. So what you need to do is you need to supplement to make sure you've got a full foundation so all of your income is protected. That's a really big deal. Really big deal. Okay? Now, another way that I like to explain finances is if you think of your money as having an offense and a defense. Okay? Offensively are ways that we accumulate wealth for the future, but defensively we got to plan for what ifs. Because as anyone in this room, did everything always go exactly as planned? Is anyone currently living that life where literally every single thing you're doing is going just like you planned it? No one? Okay, good. All right. So that's what you got to think about on your finances. Okay, so disability is number one. Number two, an adequate emergency fund. What is an adequate emergency fund? Typically, go ahead. Yep, usually I like to see 6 to 8 months of your living expenses. Okay, so whatever your living expenses, your monthly budget is, take that times 6 times 8. That's what you want to have banked up in an emergency account. I literally would set up a savings account that says emergency fund. And I literally do this, and you contribute to it every 2 weeks or once a month. Emergencies will happen. Okay? So step 1, disability coverage. Step 2, emergency fund. Step 3 is if you have any debt, You more than likely want to make sure it's protected so you don't leave that behind for your family, and that's called life insurance. Make sure you sign up for your life insurance through work. It's always ideal if you get some life insurance outside of your work, just because if you ever change jobs, it can always be in your back pocket. Because if your health would change or anything like that, it can always be with you. Health insurance is another one that you want to make sure you're signing up for through work. Obviously, if you can't get it through work, you're going to have to go on your own and get it. So I was just looking at my notes here. Back to this income protection. You're going to have short-term disability you want to be signed up for, and long-term disability. For those of you that plan on having a family someday, short-term disability is very, very important. Because if you're on maternity leave, that a lot of times helps you fill in the gaps of your income. So short-term disability and long-term disability is what you want to make sure you have. Okay, so that's exciting stuff, isn't it? That's the foundation. Right? Just pulled up this fancy house and wow, awesome. Okay, again, it's basic insurance stuff. You want to make sure you have it taken care of. There's different ways you can tweak some of the defensive products so that it accumulates wealth. Like on the life insurance side, there's a way to have that build wealth. So all of a sudden your defense starts scoring points for you long term on the offensive side. I know it's kind of confusing, but it's out there. So let's talk about this fancy house. One way that you can begin to build some real good wealth with is a 401k. Who's heard of a 401k before? So most of you have. Okay, good. Do I have an eraser? I thought I had an eraser.
Do you guys have any questions about the foundation piece? Before he gets into the house?
It's what about the 40%?
What's that?
What about the 40%?
The 40% on the disability income, that's where you're going to want to seek out, a financial planner to supplement that, to fill in that gap, to fill in the rest of your foundation. That's a big planning mistake that a lot of people don't realize even exists. Because they're like, hey, I have it through work, it's taken care of. But actually, typically it's not. Yep. Usually 60%. Not every time, just read your benefits booklet when you get it. But yeah, if you are a business owner and you don't have any of these benefits, you can set these up for yourself on your own. Seek out a financial planner, financial advisor. They can help you with it. Okay. Any other questions on the fancy foundation? Nothing? Okay. All right, so now I'm going to draw a bucket. Okay? We're going to talk about a 401k for those of you that are wondering how in the world does this thing work. Okay, this is a bucket. This is a spigot where we could turn it on or off. Okay? There is a lid on the bucket. There's a little spot where you can drop money in, right there. Okay? All right. So this is how a 401k works. Pretty good picture, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so a lot of times your employer will match dollar for dollar. I'm just going to use the number 3%. Not all of your employers are going to do that. 3% isn't always going to be the number. Sometimes it's going to be 0, sometimes it's going to be 10. Most common, I would say, we see 3% or 6%. What you want to make sure you do here is put in as much as you can so you get the full match from your employer. A lot of times you may have to put in 3% to get their 3% match. What's happening is your employer is dumping that money in here right beside yours. I don't know about your math, but that's a really good rate of return. When you put in 3 and they match 3. Right? Sometimes you might have to put in 6% to get their 3. Make sense? Now how this works is, here's the money you paid in. The concept is you want to make money, and it's called interest. Okay? Now with a 401k, typically age 59 and a half is the soonest you can turn on that spigot to take money out. Everybody tracking with me so far? Loving the picture? Yeah? Feeling it? All right, good. Now remember this lid. It's important you all understand this lid. What am I doing on time? We're good? So the way this lid works is it tells the IRS, don't be taxing me all the time. Just let my money sit in there and grow. So the IRS says, hey, we'll make that deal with you. We won't tax you. So we're going to put this lid on there so the IRS can't reach their hands in there and tax you. We'll make that deal with you, but you have to leave that thing in there until age 59 and a half. Otherwise, if you try to reach in there, so you, as individuals, not the IRS, you, the IRS is saying, if you try to reach in there, we're going to slap your hand with a 10% penalty plus taxes. Let me put this into perspective for you. You have $10,000 in there, and you're really tempted to go buy that house you've always wanted. Remember that house you just pulled up to before? Yeah, that one. That's the one that you want, and you're like, you know what, I got 10 grand in the 401k. That'd be an awesome down payment. Let's do it. You can do that. However, the IRS is going to take $3,500, and you're going to end up with $6,500 in your hands. $3,500 gone. Okay? So 401k is excellent, long term. Don't be saving up for your house in your 401k. Think of that purely retirement. Okay? Now, there's another bucket out there. So I'm going to change from a bucket now to a 4-door car. Here we go. Ready? I'm not going to draw a car. It's going to be a 4-door. So a 4-door car, it's a Roth IRA. There's 4 ways, there's 4 doors you can open on the Roth. The first door is you can open it up at age 59 and a half, and all money comes out tax-free. The second door is you could take money out for kids' college education. There's some more small print in there on how you can use it. The third door you can open is down payment of your first house. Again, there's going to be some small print on limitations on how much. And then the last door you can open up would be cost basis, what you've paid in after 5 years. Again, small print stuff. Bottom line, a Roth can be a good way to accumulate some cash because, and I forgot to put here, is all of this money comes out taxable. A Roth IRA, it all comes out tax-free. So I also know magic, okay, with a calculator. Okay, there we go. So let's say you save $4,000 a year into your 401k. Okay, so $4,000. Let's say you do that for 35 years. So we got $4,000 going in. You do that for 35 years. Let's say you average 7%. Any guesses on what that's going to total? And you're all just very excited to know this number, aren't you? $4,000. It's just shy of $600,000. You paid in $140,000. Okay? It's time value of money. It's very, very powerful. Now, $600,000, you paid in $140,000. Y'all can see this, right? $460,000 is taxable under that scenario, under the 401k. If it's all sitting in the Roth, how much of that is taxable when it comes out? This is the pop quiz. 0, correct? Pretty sweet deal. Now, you always want to do your 401k first because that's an automatic match. Typically on a Roth, you won't get a match. But there's Roth 401ks out there. Okay, so a couple more things. What I've noticed too over time is if it's systematic, if you have your budget set up so you're automatically saving, it is the most powerful way to save. the most powerful. So set your things up automatic. Here's the accounts literally that I do, but I'd encourage you to do as well. Number one, have an emergency fund account set up. Okay, make sure you have the foundation, all the boring stuff, right? Life, disability insurance, have that set up. Then what you want to set up is a vacation fund. If you like vacations, a travel fund, or just a fun fund. Okay? A lot of times when people sit down with financial advisors, financial planners, they're always scared of us saying, save every penny you have, don't eat out, bring your own lunch, and you'll be loaded when you're 65 years old. Right? You won't have a life, but you'll be really rich. I don't like that philosophy. I think it's important we are responsible with our money, but we need to live and have memories and experiences with our family along the way too. So if you like to travel, if you have some hobbies that cost some money, set up an account specifically for it. Well, there isn't enough in there. What does that tell you? You might be traveling too much, or you need to bump that up and save some more. The next one is I'd have a midterm account. That's not an exam account, not midterms. It is, for my family, the midterm account is I have 4 kids, and I know they're going to need braces, and I know they're going to want cars. So I'm starting to save for it now. You might be thinking, hey, you know what, someday I want to upgrade this house, or I want to do some renovations. If you already know you're going to do that, start saving now for it, have it set up systematic, have the bank account, have the bank set it up for you, make sure they're not charging you a bunch of fees. And then the last piece is your retirement strategy, which I always think it's important to have a financial coach to help you out as you're charting the course towards your retirement. You are planning for a 30-year vacation, so plan on it taking more than just 1 hour of planning out your retirement. It's probably going to take an hour or 2 hours a year at least to plan it out. Has anyone gone on over a 1-week vacation recently? It takes a little while to plan it, doesn't it? Yeah. So if you're planning for 30 years, that should take a while, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's open it up for our one last thing. How much should you be saving for retirement? It's a common question we get a lot. Depending upon your goals, 15 to 25% of your income is what you want to be directing towards the long term. 15 to 25% of your income. Well, I'm putting 10% or I'm putting 6% in my 401k plus 3? No, that's a bonus. You just count that number. Oh, you mean I'll have more money at retirement? Yes, you'll end up having more. What's the alternative? You'll have less, and it's too late to make it up. Okay? So 15 to 25% of your income, the best time I found for people to save is where most of you almost are at. You just graduated from college and you just got your first job. That is the best time to set all of this stuff up. Because you're used to being broke, right? I was in your shoes once too. It's like, ramen noodles, ham sandwiches all the time. Yep. So now all of a sudden you're making $40,000, $50,000 a year. Bingo, set all your savings plans up now because you're used to being broke. So go for it. Well, I'm not able to buy the house if I set those accounts up. Well, what does that tell you? It's not the right time yet to buy the house. Okay? All right, let's open it up for questions.
Yeah, so I'm not very familiar with the 401k from another country.
Yep.
But you said that the employers match a certain percent of what you're doing. Why didn't you change employers?
What if you change employers? Good question. Good question. So you'll have a old 401k, and now you're going to go into your new job and you're firing up a new 401k. Yep. A lot of times you have to have a vested period. Again, there's some fine print sometimes on how companies set it up. For the most part, it's all yours. Some companies say, hey, you're vested after a year or 2 years or 3 years, and then you can take it with you. So if you take it with you, you can either take that one, dump it into your new 401k, or, I don't want to talk too fancy and too fast here, or you can say, you know what, this new job I have, I don't think I'm going to be there the rest of my working career, so I'm just going to have my own personal IRA that's in my back pocket that follows me around wherever I go. So I don't have to keep rolling 401k to 401k to 401k. I can just have this IRA that's always with me. Does that answer your question, Steve?
Yeah.
Yep. Good. And what other questions do you have? Okay, you'll have a bet. Yep, that's a good question. Part of your defense, that foundation, that life, make sure you have a lot of life insurance if you plan on dying before 59. The second part is you'll name a beneficiary on your 401k. Yep. Yep. So you'll name your wife or children. Yep.
If the rough one is so much better than the 401k was,
So it used to be 401k is the only match, well, it still is the only matching account, so that's the best one. Because I mean, that's really good rate of return, doubling your money. They do have a Roth 401k right now, but they typically will match into the 401k, but not your Roth. But your contributions go into the Roth. I know that's confusing, but they just haven't done anything fancy with the Roths for employers being able to match into it. Yep. Any other questions?
Even with the penalties that you take out, would you recommend to take out of that, pay off that student loans and stuff like that, or just leave it?
Okay, so I'm gonna give you a story. Whenever you drive through a community, smaller community or even a big city, what is usually the nicest buildings? Who said bank? Bank. That's the answer I was looking for. Why do they typically have the nicest buildings? Kind of. So, all right, if you go to the bank right now, you can probably get a loan at 6%. If you've got money sitting in a checking account, they're paying you 0.000001, right? They're barely paying you anything. So what you need to think like is think like a banker. If you have your student loans locked in at 3%, I don't know what student loan, I mean, you might be at 4, you might be at 5%. I would use an average on the market between 6 and 8%, depending upon your age. For the most part, I would say probably 80 to 90% of the time, you're better off not touching this and just plugging away on your student loans. Most of the time. That's where it's important that you seek out somebody to help you and coach you as you're going through this. Everybody's situation is different.
would it be better to pay off more like, refrain from putting in the savings account to pay off like student loan faster, or not just?
If your emergency fund is built up to a level that you're at that, depending upon your comfort level, between 3 and 8 months. If your savings account is at $1,000 and your living expenses are $3,000 and you have an emergency that pops up, you're probably gonna have to go put it on a credit card. Hopefully you don't, but if you do, your credit card's gonna charge you 10 or 15%. It's gonna hurt. So you're gonna be way farther ahead. Make sure that emergency fund is built up, then start throwing extra cash towards debt reduction.
Just saying, take it slow at first, but loans and you get set up. And
Yep. It's kind of like if you think about what's more important, inhaling or exhaling? Or is it exhaling? But it's kind of like, there's like, both of them are important, right? But let's say I just inhaled the whole time. And we're not talking about Mitch, what you grew down in Iowa City. He did not grow that. No, what my point is a lot of questions we get is, should I pay off debt or should I save money? It's kind of inhaling and exhaling. They're both important. You got to find a good balance that you're comfortable with. Yeah. But don't go too gung-ho crazy on debt reduction or saving long term, because there's penalties if we need to dip into that. And there's penalties if we don't have that emergency fund set up. It's only getting high interest loans. There's a lid on the Roth too. Yeah. There's a lid. Works same way, 10% plus taxes. Yeah. What other questions? Why do they take taxes out like that? Welcome to the world. Yeah, that's how it works. The roads that we drove in on were paid by taxes. You know, it's how they run our entire system. Yeah. Yeah, it's not fun, but it's reality. You can not pay them, but that wouldn't be good. You'd probably get free room and board for a long time.
Could you pay them off like slowly throughout the time and not have to pay all the end?
Yeah, you can, let's say you've got $1 million in here and you want to take out 50,000 a year. You just pay tax on the 50,000 as it's coming out each year. You won't pay tax on the full $1 million all at once, unless you cash the full thing out, which would not be smart. Which is why it's important that you have a financial coach to help you strategize the right way. Any other questions?
Where does this disability coverage come from?
Where does it come from, or where do you get it? Most insurance companies have it. I know Northwestern Mutual is a darn good one. There's a lot of financial planners can hook you up with that. Yeah, but it will come from insurance companies. Sometimes you can supplement it through your work. Sometimes.
40 extra % with stocks or just investing?
How do they protect? How do they?
No, the 40% risk of foundation. We get that for health and life insurance, or is that?
No, that's the other piece to the disability coverage that you need to make sure to fill. You won't actually be able to get the full 40%, because if you think about it, if you could make 100% being disabled, then why would you work? Exactly. So they're not going to let you insure all the way up to 100%. But the conceptually, I think you guys understand that piece too. More questions? Nothing? So now you can go accumulate massive wealth, pull up that really nice house and get out, walk in your door, right? With a really good foundation. All right, thanks everybody.
Awesome.